So,
It's the lighting. It's getting the lighting and video just balanced so you can see it.
I think it's fantastic.
Mr. Eisner?
Oh, hi, Michael.
Oh, certainly, Mr. Eisner. Sorry to disturb you, but I'm delivering to you Mr. Barry Bostwick and Mr. Richard Kind. If you'll just sign for them.
Really?
Yeah, right on there. Thank you very much.
Oh,
Hey, Michael.
Richard.
Hi, Michael.
Barry. So?
Yeah, we were told to meet the big cheese at the Disneyland Resort.
The big cheese. I'm not the big. I wish I was the big cheese. This is the big cheese.
Oh! Hiya, fellas! Gee, I've been looking for you all day. Well, I want to give you a personal tour of Disney's California Adventure. Ooh, what do you say we start with a ride on California Screamin'?
So, Mickey, it's just you and me, and I love that ride, and I want to go on it with you.
Aw, okay, boss.
Okay, boss. And you know, Mickey, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful theme park.
You betcha.
It wasn't. And now the story of a company in panic and the one CEO who just couldn't seem to catch a break. It is Defunctland. On July 17, 1955, Disneyland opened its gates to the public, and along with elaborate theming, it had an expansive, magical parking lot. Due to its placement in Anaheim, Disneyland's land was far from sprawling. This made the parking lot prime real estate for any kind of expansion, including a potential second gate. While a variety of concepts for a second park were proposed over the years, it wouldn't be until 1982 that the Walt Disney Company would seriously begin to consider it. On October 1st of that year, Epcot Center in Orlando, Florida's Walt Disney World opened. This created the Walt Disney World Resort as it is known today, and it made a multi-day vacation to the resort necessary if guests were going to explore all of the offerings. 2 years later in 1984, it was becoming increasingly clear that, despite Epcot's success, Disney as a company was not doing well. A string of box office failures from their studio and big budget projects for the parks had brought Disney to the lowest point in the company's history, and many feared a takeover. In a bold move by the company, then CEO and President Ron Miller was ousted, and Michael Eisner was brought in as the company's new CEO. Eisner had big plans for the company, the most notable of which were to turn the company's failing studios around, make the existing Disney parks more appealing to older audiences, expand internationally with the addition of a European park, and finally make Anaheim a multi-day resort with the addition of a second gate. In 1987, the Walt Disney Company acquired the Rather Corporation. Decades earlier in the mid-1950s, Walt Disney had asked oil tycoon and television producer Jack Rather to build the Disneyland Hotel, since Disney lacked the funds, having spent most of his money constructing Disneyland. Since then and up until Disney's acquisition in 1987, the Rather Corporation had owned the Disneyland Hotel and property near the theme park. The obvious next step after obtaining the necessary assets was to finally build a second theme park in the Disneyland Resort, and it might have been that simple, had Eisner not gotten distracted. Apart from the Disneyland Hotel, the Rather Corporation also owned the RMS Queen Mary, a retired ocean liner that was permanently docked in Long Beach, California. After Disney acquired the Rather Corporation, Eisner became interested in transforming the Queen Mary and surrounding land into a new resort called Port Disney. Port Disney was to feature hotels, a cruise ship dock, and an all-new ocean-themed amusement park called Disney Sea. Eisner pitted the cities of Anaheim and Long Beach against one another, trying to decide whether to build Disney Sea as the second gate to the Disneyland Resort or build it in Long Beach within Port Disney. The announcement was made in January of 1990, and Anaheim and Long Beach both worked with Disney in order to bring the new theme park to their city. However, the citizens of both cities were not thrilled with the Disney expansion, citing the issues the residential neighborhoods of Anaheim already faced due to the existing park. This, along with a variety of other legal, logistical, and budgetary issues, caused Eisner to announce in late 1991 that plans for Port Disney and Disney Sea had been scrapped in favor of an alternative idea that the Imagineers had been drafting. Due to the popularity of Florida's Epcot, Eisner and the Imagineers believed that a West Coast version of the park was the best idea for Disneyland's second gate. The park would have been almost identical to Epcot, with a few notable changes, such as a larger spaceship Earth, improved future world attractions, and a much different world showcase, including a steel dragon coaster in the Asia Pavilion and a boat cruise around the entire world. Westcott was announced at the same time as the cancellation of Port Disney and Disney Sea in 1991. 1 year later, Euro Disneyland would open, which, for a variety of reasons that are too long to discuss here, failed horribly. The budget for the parks division was cut dramatically, and as ideas for Westcott grew, it became clear that the company could not afford such an expansion. But Eisner did not give up on the Disneyland resort, and despite the issues, went forward with his plans for a second park. Eisner had a simple technique that he often used when he decided on new projects. The technique is known as jealousy. Whenever Eisner saw another company doing something successfully, he decided that Disney would do the same thing. Moreover, he would take the idea and do basically the same thing in basically the same place. For instance, after seeing the success of the amusement park zoo hybrid Busch Gardens Tampa in the early 90s, he greenlit Disney's Animal Kingdom. The park was just over an hour from Busch Gardens. After seeing the success of the Church Street Station nightclubs in Orlando, Florida, Eisner greenlit his own nightclubs in Pleasure Island at the Disney Village Marketplace. Pleasure Island was about half an hour from Church Street Station. So when Westcott was canceled and Disney returned to the drawing board, it wouldn't be long until Eisner was presented with a new idea. Since the Disneyland resort at the time provided such a short visit to vacationers, many of the guests would go explore the other tourist offerings of California after their trip. Disneyland president Paul Pressler recognized this and pitched an idea to Eisner. If Disney could provide all the sights and attractions of the state of California within the Disneyland resort, then guests would have no reason to leave and spend their money elsewhere. This concept would develop into the plans for California Adventure, a California-themed theme park to be located in the already California-themed California. Concept art for the park was released in 1996, a year after Westcott was canceled. The release stated that California Adventure would feature everything from soaring above Yosemite Valley to the glitz and glamour of Hollywood movie making. The original concept art from the park had a sense of serenity, and it seemed to be designed as an intimate, romantic tribute to California. In the Hollywood section of the park, there was to be a recreation of the theme building, the observation deck, and former restaurant at the Los Angeles International Airport, which was being renovated by Walt Disney Imagineering around the time that California Adventure was in development. This was to be the show building to one of California Adventure's signature attractions, Superstar Limo, a high-speed dark ride that would take guests on a wild paparazzi chase through Hollywood. As guests boarded the attraction, they would be greeted by Michael Eisner himself. Eisner would tell guests that they had to get to the big premiere at Grauman's Chinese Theater as soon as possible to sign a contract for their next film. But he warned guests that the paparazzi were all over town, and if they were caught doing anything to ruin their image, then Eisner would have to cancel the deal. The limo driver would then floor it in an attempt to get guests to the movie premiere on time. According to Disney historian Jim Hill, the ride system would have been a combination of a traditional dark ride and a family-friendly roller coaster. The ride would have also included a variety of jokes and gags. For instance, guests would fly past the famous Tail of the Pup hot dog stand with a large man in rhinestones creating sounds of flatulence. But as guests turned the corner, it would become clear that this was actually Elvis Presley squirting mustard onto a hot dog. The ride ended with guests reaching the Chinese Theater, only to have Eisner tell them that he would have to cancel the contract because they had been caught by the paparazzi. Then, a picture taken of guests while on the ride would be shown, cropped into a tabloid reporting on their limo chase. After this, guests would exit and walk the red carpet into the Chinese Theater, which was the gift shop and exit to the attraction, where fake Oscars, on-ride photos, and t-shirts would have been sold. The original concept of Superstar Limo was nothing groundbreaking, but it seemed that it would have been a fun dark ride that would have fit perfectly in the Hollywood section of the park. However, the mid-90s version of the attraction would not be the one that guests experienced when the park opened, and this time, it wasn't Eisner's fault. In August of 1997 in Paris, France, Diana, Princess of Wales, was killed in a limo accident. Her driver was supposedly fleeing from paparazzi when he lost control of the wheel. The tragedy captured the attention of the entire world, who grieved the death of the princess and the other passengers. As for Eisner and his team, they now had a big problem. Superstar Limo could no longer be a high-speed paparazzi chase, because it would now seem that it was some sort of twisted reference to the tragedy. The Imagineers scrambled, briefly considering cloning a Disney MGM attraction to the Anaheim park. Top contenders were the Great Movie Ride, the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, or Rock and Roller Coaster, which at the time was still in development. Of these, the Tower of Terror was probably considered to be the top contender, as Eisner was heavily pushing for the idea of a ride-hotel hybrid. On top of most everyone besides him thinking that this was a bad idea that logistically would be problematic, if not impossible, it was also clear that the budget for California Adventure would not allow for this, or any of the other potential attractions, which meant that the Hollywood section of the park would not have a ride on opening day. Or would it? Forced, whether by situation or executives, to write a treatment for an acceptable version of Superstar Limo, the Imagineers had a few solutions. 1. Remove most of the references to paparazzi. 2. Remove any high-speed element by having the limos inch forward through the show building. And 3. Add more setting-specific jokes and gags. The idea wasn't good, and the Imagineers considered Superstar Limo to be dead. Unfortunately, if their job was to please the boss, they had done it a little too well. Eisner, who had been in the entertainment industry for decades, adored the inside jokes and Hollywood gags. He loved them so much that he greenlit the new, terrible version of the attraction. Imagineering, most likely baffled at what they now had to do, did their best to make the attraction work. This included scrapping the Chinese theater gift shop and adding the theater as a show scene in the ride in order to fill time. After budgets were slashed even more, the theme building exterior was scrapped in favor of a cartoonish cutout look. This art style was also used within the ride itself. The only three-dimensional animated figures would be that of celebrities, but due to the lack of budget, these would have to be celebrities whose likenesses were cheap or stars that the Walt Disney Company already had contracts with. Also, these were not animatronics, but barely animated figures with minimal, unconvincing movement. At some point, Eisner realized that the ride was going to be bad, so he made a few quick changes to save face. First, he removed a reference to DreamWorks animation that read Dream Jerks Animation, which referenced the ongoing feud between former president of Walt Disney Studios Jeffrey Katzenberg, who now worked for DreamWorks, and Eisner. Also, Eisner asked Imagineering to remove him from the ride, and the on-ride footage was replaced with a sleazy Hollywood agent barking orders at guests, proving that Superstar Limo foreshadowed more than one catastrophe. The retooled ride opened with California Adventure on February 8, 2001. So was it as bad as they thought it would be? Yes. Yes, it was.
Here and around Hollywood Boulevard, there's lots of fun and interesting places to eat and shop, all geared to bring out the Hollywood in everyone. And if you've ever wanted to be a star, then you have to ride Superstar Limo.
The cartoon cutout exterior of Superstar Limo features a variety of landmarks from Los Angeles, such as Union Station, City Hall, and the Beverly Hills Hotel. One section features the world's shortest railway, Los Angeles' Angel's Flight. The railway, which was constructed in 1901, had recently reopened, but an accident resulted in the death of a passenger on February 1, 2001, exactly 1 week before California Adventure and Superstar Limo would open. However, the prominent reference on the queue's exterior would not be removed. Another interesting feature was the flower bed that was decorated to look like a pool. After making their way into the queue, guests would find themselves in the baggage claim area in the LAX airport. The inside jokes to California and the entertainment industry would begin with a female announcer giving instructions to arriving passengers.
The white zone is for loading and unloading only. No schmoozing.
Further into the queue, guests would encounter television screens playing an entertainment news report featuring a horrifying puppet version of the late Joan Rivers. Rivers would describe Hollywood's next biggest star, who was set to arrive at LAX that day. This star turns out to be the guests entering the ride. In this queue area, there were more cartoon cutouts that helped foreshadow what a terrible experience guests were about to have. One example of this was a baggage carousel with packaged Oscars. After guests winded their way through the queue, they would approach the ground transportation section of the airport and board their limo. A sparkly, purple, cartoonish limo. A cast member guides them into their cars and tells them to enjoy their premiere. Guests are then sent on their way into their soon-to-be recurring nightmare. An announcer tells them to keep their hands, feet, and egos in the limo at all times. Ha! The limo enters a dark tunnel, and the guest agent appears on the screen attached to the ride's vehicle. Despite being a creepy, gross puppet, this turned out to be the most realistic part of the ride.
Now don't be late, babe.
The first showroom is Beverly Hills, and Regis Philbin pops out of the door, fanning himself with money. Next up, Melanie Griffith with Antonio Banderas, then immediately following, Cindy Crawford. And this is just the beginning. The next show scene is the Sunset Strip. Here, guests get to see Tim Allen and Jackie Chan. After this, guests enter a second tunnel and are reminded by their agent to not be late. The third show scene is Bel Air, where guests can see Drew Carey with a handful of star maps. Guests also run into sponsors trying to get them to sign advertising deals. A third tunnel features another reminder from their agent before the Malibu show scene. Here, guests encounter Cher, standing in the corner of the scene as if she doesn't want to be there. The limo then enters the studio lots, where guests encounter paparazzi, screenwriters, and production assistants, all represented through cheap cutouts. After this, guests arrive for their premiere, where none other than Whoopi Goldberg greets them. Guests are shown an on-ride photo of themselves before entering a final tunnel, where their agent tells them that they are a superstar. And that was Superstar Limo.
So now, everybody, I thought we'd go over to Superstar Limo.
Yeah.
You know why?
Why?
Well,
Because I'm on it.
Excellent.
that's right, because we're here at California Adventures, right next to Disneyland.
Exactly, located right next to Disney.
Superstar Limo has an exact...
Superstar Limo.
The picture of me at Superstar Limo, it looks exactly like you. You just can't believe it.
Really? It's,
It
gonna
does.
bring
It's like a
some-
photograph.
All right.
Wow.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go. Now, this is not a scary fast ride, right?
No. This is just like a scenic, like as if you were new in Hollywood and you want to become a superstar to ride in.
Yeah.
Come on, my darling, let's take a ride.
Yeah. Say hi.
See you on the way back.
Say hi to me. Yeah, this is a real easy ride to go on.
Yeah?
Right.
Okay.
Whoa!
Wow. There's Regis Philbin. And that's my
Oh, see?
Introducing vivacious Melanie Griffith and dashing Antonio Banderas. Wow. And there's Hollywood beauty Cindy Crawford.
Oh, Cindy.
Cindy Crawford?
All right.
Hey, there's Tim Allen.
Hold your sides, everyone. It's Funny Man Tim Allen. Come to Bel Air.
Look at that.
How about a map to your house, Drew Carey?
Isn't that Robert Zemeckis?
Hello, party. Hold your breath now.
Whoa! We got a picture of him.
Come on. Malibu, where the beautiful people become even more beautiful.
Pretend you're sleeping for the picture.
Pretend you're sleeping.
Why, the always entertaining Cher. Movie.
Wow.
Hollywood favorite, Whoopi Goldberg.
Whoopee. All right, we're going to Sorrel, California.
There might be no better way to illustrate the reaction the public had to the ride than the on-ride photos. It is no surprise that the ride was received negatively, with guests complaining that they had waited a half hour to ride the cheap pop-up book. Superstar Limo was not the only issue. California Adventure as a whole was berated by the general public and critics alike.
But overall, the lines were so short at times out here.
I thought it was closed. This is outstanding.
The concept was bad, the execution was worse, and Superstar Limo was unforgivable. It is no surprise that on January 11, 2002, less than a year after the park opened, Superstar Limo was closed. Management had no replacement in mind. They just realized that guests visiting California Adventure would be a lot happier if they never experienced the attraction. The building sat abandoned in the Hollywood Pictures backlot for 4 years. Rumors circulated of various redressings that the ride could undergo. Jim Hill reported that the Imagineers were considering retooling the ride into Goofy's Superstar Limo, where Goofy would drive guests through Hollywood, and the C-list celebrities would be replaced with classic animated Disney characters. To pull this off, Disney would take over 100 Disney figures that had been placed in Disney stores throughout the United States and move them into the new show scenes. Another idea was to reopen the ride as is, and over the course of a few months, introduce animatronics of the Muppets cast at various points in the ride. These characters would be wearing hard hats and be actively renovating Superstar Limo as guests rode through it. The Muppets would also be commenting on how horrible the current version of the ride was. The finished product after the transformation would be Miss Piggy's Superstar Limo. Of course, neither of these ideas happened, and the building continued to sit abandoned. It wouldn't be until after Eisner stepped down from CEO in 2005 that the Superstar Limo space would receive a new attraction. As the first step in what would become a $1.5 billion expansion and renovation to California Adventure, the new management team constructed the Pixar-themed dark ride, Monsters Inc. Mike and Sully to the Rescue. The simple dark ride would take guests throughout the events of the first Monsters Inc. film, and it was set to open on January 23, 2006. But that is not the end of Superstar Limo's story. Oh no, the ride very much lives on, in the absolute worst way possible. Since the Monsters Inc. dark ride was a quick fix for the park, coming a year before the major expansion, it didn't have the budget to bulldoze the space and start over. Quite the opposite, really. In order to save money, the Imagineers decided to utilize as much of Superstar Limo as possible. This included retrofitting the cutout exterior with door designs, which actually matched the film's intro animation, repurposing the limos into Monstropolis taxis, reusing the track layout and some of the tunnel sequences, and there was one more thing. Oh yeah, they stripped the C-list celebrity figures and dressed them into various animatronics throughout the ride. Some of these zombatronics are more obvious than others, and the Drew Carey and Jackie Chan figures are especially easy to spot. But don't worry, most, if not every figure in the ride was reused in some way. While the new ride has received mixed reviews, and its inclusion of the previous attraction's assets is unsettling to say the least, it is a far better dark ride than Superstar Limo. While Disney might wish they could erase Superstar Limo from the memories of the unfortunate park guests that experienced it, it is still important to remember the ride and the other missteps of California Adventure. The story is a good reminder that even a company as big as Disney can still get themselves into financial difficulty, creative gridlock, and even some pretty wacky situations. On the next Defunctland, Michael Eisner learns the differences between building a park in Tokyo and building a park in Paris.
We'll resort to the magic of Disney and hope that in the end makes the dream come true.